I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again, barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money, we're gonna spend ya. You won't wonder where it's all gonna end ya. If you feel me, we never wanna defend ya. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Hey Sean, you got a party. You got that little party going on there. Keep to the left, you can't think right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money, we're gonna spend ya. You won't wonder where it's all gonna end ya. If you feel me, we never wanna defend ya. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money, we're gonna spend ya. You won't wonder where it's all gonna end ya. If you feel me, we never wanna defend ya. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing, if all you do is just what you're doing.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money, we're gonna spend ya. You won't wonder where it's all gonna end ya. If you feel me, we never wanna defend ya. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced lies.
Is this where you wanna be? Debt and childhood poverty. Won't somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy? Oh yeah.
Barefaced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money, we're gonna spend ya. You won't wonder where it's all gonna end ya. If you feel me, we never wanna defend ya. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money, we're gonna spend ya. You won't wonder where it's all gonna end ya. If you feel me, we never wanna defend ya. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money, we're gonna spend ya. You won't wonder where it's all gonna end ya. If you feel me, we never wanna defend ya. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money, we're gonna spend ya. You won't wonder where it's all gonna end ya. If you feel me, we never wanna defend ya. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise.
fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Very, very good evening. Sunday, the 22nd of June 2025. My name is Raj Emir. This is a Reticent 9 transmission. We should have sound. I always follow the commentary, so I find it entertaining, shall I say. Okay, first things first. Before I forget, the meal is booked. It's booked at the Mill On. For those of you who know it, the link's gone out on Facebook, and I think I'll put it up on X, and it'll go out in the morning, emailed. It does work. You don't have to press your button hard, soft, any of that. It does work. I've used Eventbrite before for other things myself. I've had it checked. It has been set up right. I think it's just people. So thank you. You've got your ticket, so that is very, very good. The way I've had to set it up is on a donation, so you can just put £1 in if you want, or 50p. I'm not really that bothered. I've paid for it. Like I've said to you, it's my pleasure to host all of you after so long on this journey. I know some of you are new on this journey. Some of you have been with me for such a long time. So I've booked the entire restaurant out for Monday the 28th of July, about a 6:30 sort of start, I think. And, for a 7 meal, everything's paid for, and you just need to cover your drinks. So whatever the donations come through, I'll just put that as a kitty behind the bar for the night, and that should be that. Now, I just genuinely find it bizarre. I've always found it bizarre. I don't understand it. Increasingly doing less and less work in my hometown, and I think the reason why, a couple of reasons why, and one is because what's the phrase, big fish small pond sort of folk who even are finding fault in on this. There's a photograph here. This photograph is from a meal we hosted at a place called the Blue Tiffin, and it was after we had removed, I think, Arud Shah from power in Chadderton South. So we'd run a campaign. Sat next to me is Councillor Lewis Quigg and Gary Tarbuck here, who ran as a Conservative, came a very close second. It was only a handful of votes he lost by, but we got Lewis over the line. And they came and had a meal with us. And I'm hearing... I don't know what to say. You're all welcome. You've all always been welcome. Just, there's 100 tickets there. And if we sell out and there's more, I'm sure the lads at the Milan will figure it out. So please, I would love to see you. It's Monday the 28th of July. And if you can't get there, we'll do it another time. Next time I'm in Holland, I occasionally catch a night train from Amsterdam to Berlin or Prague with my daughter. So next time I'm Holland way, Stephen, I will definitely give you a call. It is I'll put the link. It's on Facebook, the link. I only set it up earlier, but I'll make sure the link goes out to everyone via Red Wall and the Rabble. I'll do that tomorrow. I've just not had the time. So Thank you so much. In terms of interviews, before we get on with the transmission, I got another interview with Peter McCormack, I think it was. He interviewed me not long ago and got in touch. So a week on Monday, I'm back in London to be interviewed by him. Nick Buckley, my friend Nick Buckley's had me back on this last week. And all I say to all of you is please keep watching, please keep sharing, because the only time I get invited is the main reason I get invited onto the podcast YouTube channels of people with hundreds of thousands of followers is because they then get hundreds of thousands of views. So please keep watching and keep sharing the content. I don't know. I will drop him a message and ask him, actually. I'll drop him a message and ask him. And as it is over a month away, if you want to chat away, then by all means carry on chatting away. But I've got a transmission to run. If it's okay with all of you. The work I do, as you all know, is only possible with your support. And I say this not for any other reason other than the truth. We are running out of time. I can sense it, I can feel it, I can see it, I'm definitely reading it. There's an attempt to rewrite history. And that attempting of rewriting history will, 1, erase us out of the story, 2, have the bad guys made out to be the good guys, and 3, the consequence will be lessons learned and nothing will change, no one will be held accountable. The only way in which we stop this, is by making sure our voice is heard as far and wide as possible. And to secure the national inquiry in the way I think it needs to be secured, we need more people to become aware. Now, if you believe that GB News and Talk on its own with their lightweight analysis will get you there, then fine. I don't. 6 years ago, when we started this, excuse me, I just need to go and do something. I need to just take a puff of my inhaler. So just give me 1 second. I'll play some music for you and I'll be back.
Too often, I'll set their face lies. I'll set their face lies. I'll set their face lies. Again, their face lies. Too often, I'll set their face lies. I'll set their face lies. I'll set their face lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. You wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. You think we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting overgrown, postal phone, their face lies.
Their face lies. Their face lies.
Hey Sean, you got a party? Got that little
That's better. My apologies. It's a bit, the air's a bit tight for me this evening. As I said, lightweight, in the sense that the depth of what's taking place, and we started 6 years ago. And 6 years ago, no one was talking about a public inquiry, or what you now know as a national inquiry. And I educated the people in my town why we needed a national inquiry, why we needed a public inquiry, and how we would go about securing one. It wasn't by crying over the survivors, although there's nothing wrong with sympathy, and you should have every sympathy and support for the survivors. It wasn't by marching up and down the streets and shouting angry slogans and attending protests. They might, I suppose, raise awareness, but the way in which they are managed, we end up being portrayed as the trouble causers. And I think the last one I attended, because I'd promised to attend one, that one in Manchester, demonstrated that as what I was trying to talk, the anti-Nazi League lot, Antifa lot were shouting Nazi at me. Now, it doesn't matter what you think. I watched that Manchester Square in Manchester. I looked at people all around me, the passers-by in particular, and the majority did not stop to listen to us. They looked at the people shouting Nazis at us, and that is why that happened. It's not enough. Marching up and down protest demos, not for me. We made a political campaign. We talked about national inquiry, and when they started playing silly buggers with these local inquiries, we educated everyone in the town as to why we needed a public inquiry, what additional powers we had. And we saw, and those of you who've been on this journey with me will have seen what we talked about on Sunday evenings, what we picked up, what I wrote about, then made its way into the statements made by politicians, others who occupy this space, and indeed the mainstream media. So when I say lightweight, I mean lightweight in the sense that they are new to this game. I'm not new to this game. I knew it needed to go over 6 years ago, and I've got this far, and I know what they will try to do next, because I've sat in rooms when they've done what they are going to try to do next. Each time in this country there's ever been a national inquiry, a public inquiry of any kind, no one has paid the price afterwards. No one's been prosecuted afterwards. No one's been personally held accountable. The compensation schemes set up have stalled. There's never been any justice. There's never been any justice, and people who believe that nothing will change, because of the experiences of the past every time others have got this far. Now I'm determined that we get not just the national inquiry, but we get to the stage it needs to go. And I have held back on this because I wanted to watch, to see if anyone said anything. And it was early enough for me to play this game. I wanted to see if anyone said anything. When we first started talking about national inquiries and public inquiries, the one and same, when we started talking about a public inquiry with statutory powers, and they presented their local inquiries, including the Telford inquiry, as the model, and I continued to say it's not good enough, was because the Telford inquiry, these local inquiries, do not have statutory powers. And we all now know that these statutory powers are necessary because it does these two things. One, it can compel witnesses, and it can go after evidence. And now you see opposition MPs, newspaper folk, reporters all echoing, oh yeah, it can do this. We need a statutory inquiry because it can compel witnesses and it can go after the evidence. What if I told you that a statutory inquiry has within its remit more? It can do one thing more that none of them are yet to raise. Within the terms of reference of a statutory inquiry, there is something else that it can do. It can name individuals and recommend prosecutions. That's right. A statutory inquiry can name individuals and recommend prosecutions. You can also recommend a compensation scheme. So I sat back and watched, and I thought, let's see if anyone picks up on this. No, absolutely not. Now, they're either ignorant, inexperienced, rather than ignorant, if that makes you feel better, or they are trying to hide that from the public discourse. I'll let you decide what. Now, I know when I started campaigning on this, I said, we need a national inquiry, we need a national inquiry, sorry, we need a public inquiry, we need a public inquiry. And the reason why is because we know that when these people do their inquiries, investigations, assurance reviews, they can hide the evidence, and the witnesses they want to call just don't need to turn up. So, now I'm telling you that an inquiry under the Inquiries Act, a statutory inquiry under the Inquiries Act, has the power to name individuals who should be prosecuted. Obviously, it can't prosecute people, but it can name individuals who should be prosecuted. They have not mentioned it, and none of them have mentioned it because, Ryan, they're inexperienced. I'm not inexperienced. It is for the inquiry to name them. And it is for us to make sure that the terms of reference are wide enough so that particular aspect of those powers are enacted. It's like going to a restaurant. I'm making the analogy based upon the meal, the meal thing. It's like going to a restaurant. The starters. That's the compelling of witnesses. They've got to turn up and testify under oath. There's a main course. We can go after the evidence. We've got powers to go after the evidence, which is why there are people now talking about files being destroyed. Yeah, that's why. And then there's dessert to finish it off. And that dessert, under the Inquiries Act, is the powers to specifically name individuals who are culpable for severe failings and recommend prosecutions in a list. So tell me, my friends, how many of you knew that? How many of you knew that? Or how many of you had been told that in the last week and a half or so, since Casey's recommendations came out? No, you didn't, did you? Because what you've been doing, what we've been doing, is playing, is dancing to their music. And I'll tell you how. What you do in these situations, if I was on the other side, is you put something forward, something absurd, and then you argue over that, and then you concede on that, and then the other side thinks, yeah, no, we pinned them, it's okay, everything's okay. So what the government, or those linked to the government, initially did, was they put out there rumours, brief people, that this inquiry cannot go after MPs of civil servants in Whitehall. Did you all hear that? Were you all outraged by that? They can't do that. They've got to go and interview MPs. They've got to go and interview civil servants. Then Beth Rigby interviews the Prime Minister. This inquiry will go wherever the evidence leads us, and yes, it goes to Whitehall. Along comes Andy Burnham. Yes, it must also go to Whitehall. And MPs, he didn't say MPs, but yeah. So you're played and you're manipulated into thinking that you've set the terms of reference to include going and taking evidence and looking into the files of MPs and civil servants in Whitehall. All this time, they're hiding from you that the Statutory Inquiries Act also has the power to name individuals and recommend that they're prosecuted. Do you see how you get played? Can you see it? Come on, admit it. How many of you, it's not something to be embarrassed by, how many of you fell into that trap? So this is a game I'm familiar with. This is a world, to my shame, I spent some time in. And that is the move they are making. Now, how many MPs have come out and said? How many newspaper reporters, analysts, sudden experts, commentators, whatever? How many have come out and said the National Inquiry should use its statutory powers to name and recommend for prosecution individuals responsible for the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children? Okay. Let's park that there for a moment and just accept, and I'm a fan of his, by the way, that I have a different skill set to Charlie Peters. And he wears a suit much, much better than I do. And that's my position, really, Adrian. What I've just shared with you, there's just 800 of you. It'll get lost. Or someone will pick it up and run with it tomorrow or the day after. No, mate. They're all new to this. They're all new to this. It's not a criticism. They're all new to this. Let me read you something. I'll bring it up so you can see it. It's important. It's about the rewriting of history involving the Manchester Evening News and Andy Burnham. The conversation with Andy Burnham that led to the grooming gang's U-turn. The government announced this week that a national inquiry into grooming gangs will go ahead. This is why. So they are pushing the narrative that it is Andy Burnham that was responsible. And again, it was a global political row that started in Oldham. 6 months on, a resolution has been reached, and now we know how. Last weekend, the Prime Minister announced a national inquiry into the grooming gangs, having previously argued against it. The Home Secretary confirmed the U-turn alongside a series of other measures as she revealed the deeply disturbing findings of a new report. But when Baroness Louise Casey started a rapid national audit in January, she didn't believe a full-blown inquiry was necessary. It followed years of furious rows in Oldham. Years of furious rows in Oldham, where councillors had called for a government-led probe. But this request was rejected. The years of furious rows in Oldham was the attempt by politicians that run the town to incite my murder. It was the attempt by the police force that Andy Burnham runs to have me falsely arrested and attempted to maliciously fabricate evidence and have me imprisoned for lies. So that's what the years of furious rows were, and of course it does, mate. But they are rewriting history. At the start of the year, the local spat went international when Elon Musk waded in, accusing government ministers of a cover-up. It was around that time that Andy Burnham joined the calls for a national inquiry. I know that many felt I was being willingly unhelpful, the Greater Manchester Mayor told the MAN this week, but it was the experience I've had over 8 years. In 2017, after a BBC documentary into the Rochdale grooming gang scandal was broadcast, Mr. Burnham announced a local inquiry. He appointed 2 independent experts to lead his assurance review into child sexual exploitation in Greater Manchester, and over the next 7 years they published 3 reports into historic abuse in Manchester, Oldham and Rochdale, and how it was dealt with. The damning reports uncovered serious failings by Greater Manchester Police and councils who fell short in their duty to protect kids. Aware of Mr. Burnham's reviews, Baroness Casey this week, she could not understand why he was now calling. She could not understand why he was now calling for a national inquiry. I think she could understand why. I think the not is the wrong word in there. So she came to Greater Manchester. To ask him and Deputy Mayor Kate Green about it directly. Well, Andy Burnham is neck deep in the cover-up, and Kate Green is working with and protecting the Pakistani gangsters, Islamists, and the corrupt police officers who have been trying to put me in prison. I have got all the emails. In typical Louis style, Mr. Burnham recalls, she just said, "I've come here to find out why you've called for a national inquiry." Kate Green and I went through it with her. We went through our experience and we said this is why we've arrived where we have. Up until January 2025, Andy Burnham, Kate Green and everyone else in the Labour Party machinery's position was they've had the inquiry and they found no cover-up. Do you see how they've just rewritten history? In Parliament on Tuesday, Baroness Casey told MPs that the Greater Manchester Mayor found the review frustrating. How many of you were with me in the council chamber when he fronted that review with the police and the council leader and all the lawyers? How many have seen the Commons-headed letter-headed paper by Angela Rayner, Debbie Abrahams and Jim McMahon – saying this review draws a line? And then McMahon standing in Parliament and calling me a racist and far-right activist. Casey will not speak to me. You all need to understand. I keep saying this to you and you all need to understand this. I am blacklisted. The politicians and in government, both the Conservatives and the Labour Party and the mainstream media. You need to understand we've got this far despite me being blacklisted. That's exactly what happened. Andy Burnham rubber-stamped McMahon's cover-up. Now she's saying nobody shared data. She told the Home Affairs Committee, this isn't about sharing of data. This is about hiding evidence. They were all lawyered up to fight over who would share what data. Speaking to the MEN the following day, Mr. Burnham said his frustrations, but said that he would have put it slightly differently. Data sharing was just a perennial problem, and if there were ever was lawyering up in this process, it was in the early days of the review, not more recently. So when is more recently? When is the early days? Remember, Burnham's review in Oldham refused to even put a number of how many children were gang raped. I'll be honest, GMP were difficult in the early days under the previous Chief Constable when the current Chief arrived and he helped unblock some of those legal issues. That's a complete lie. Because his investigators, Newsom and Ridgway, who quit so whilst Watson was in charge. And Watson, I wrote to him directly, making him aware of how his police force were involved in maliciously fabricating evidence to prosecute me and then putting me under house arrest whilst the Islamists linked to them published my address online. Even put a map of how to come and find me and a picture of my front door. Watson knew, Watson did nothing. I don't think you understand how I work. I have no intention of writing to Baroness Casey. Last year, Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway, the experts who Mr. Burnham appointed to lead his assurance review, resigned. Well, they resigned under Watson, not under the previous Chief Constable. See? Even in their own sentences, if you understand the chronology and some of the background information, you can see the lies. But most people don't know any of this. Most people don't know any of this. They had been due to write one final report looking at the current practices in place locally to deal with child sexual exploitation. However, after struggling to get hold of data throughout the review process, even under the new Chief Constable who Baroness Casey credited for his commitment to get this right, it was decided that national inspectors would complete the final stage instead. That wasn't what happened. They quit, they ran away, and they also ran away because they could see what was happening in Oldham. GMP has said that the nature of the information requested impinged on ongoing investigations, complete fabrication, which presented some difficulties. But it wasn't just data. Without any power to compel people to give evidence, some former police officers and social workers refused. That really made me think, like he didn't know this was going to happen, Mr. Burnham said. Well, if I was a victim or a family who'd been affected, I would just read that and think that's not good enough. Well, he never said that, did he? He fronted it. He fronted it all the time. Why would I want to speak to Baroness Casey now? Explain that to me. So I understand it and I'll explain to you my response to it. Why would I want to speak to Baroness Casey now? It was after the publication of the Rochdale report last year that the Mayor made recommendations to the then Conservative Home Secretary that there should be powers even at a local inquiry level to compel relevant people to come forward and give evidence. It wasn't after the publication of the Rochdale report last year that happened. The only way in which you get powers is through a statutory inquiry. But back in 2022, after the long-awaited second report into Oldham, Mr. Burnham defended the review at a fiery town hall meeting. You see? Amid angry heckling by protesters, he said the review was good value for money and good for the people of Greater Manchester. Most people won't get to the bottom of that. They'll just read the headline and think it's Andy Burnham who's convinced the government to secure a public inquiry. 3/4 of the way through the article, back in 2022, after a long-awaited second report into Oldham, remember that report in Oldham would never have took place if we hadn't campaigned, Mr. Burnham defended the review at a fiery town hall meeting. The reason the meeting was fiery town hall meeting was fiery was because I took 100 people with me to that meeting. Amid angry heckling by protesters, I think it wasn't heckling, by the way. It was just outrage. He said the review was good value for money and good for the people of Greater Manchester. What followed in Oldham was years of divisive debates over whether another inquiry was needed and what kind it should be. And so we are very clear. Motions from opposition councillors calling for a government-led inquiry into grooming gangs in Oldham were voted down by Labour until the party lost its majority at the council last year, and after striking a deal to stay in power, they agreed to back a national inquiry. That's not what happened. It's a matter of fact, on the videos we've done, we manipulated them, we outplayed them to vote the way to support it because they thought they were voting for something else. We need the rules of the council. We trapped the interim borough solicitor, and then what they thought they were going to do, which was to amend the motion, they failed to amend it because they were in breach of their own rules. We outmaneuvered them, and that's why we got that done. As to why I'm blacklisted, I'm blacklisted obviously by the Labour Party, the Conservatives. Last time someone asked Maggie Oliver about me, she made some references to she'd heard of me. To give Tommy Robinson his due, his credit, he has never shied away from acknowledging who I am and the work I've been involved in. And as for Reform blacklisting me, they haven't. I go to Reform branches across the country. I go and meet with the councillors, advise and support them. The problem we've got with Reform is Reform in my hometown is led by a man who has an issue with me, let's say. When we fell out, it was a number of years ago, when I'd been arrested. My house had been dawn raided. I was in a complete mess. And he phoned me up wanting me to play the game because he had a book deal for himself lined up. My life in ruins. I'm suicidal. And he wants me to get with the program because he had a book deal lined up. Again, this is very well documented. There were people here, people like Lynn, there were people here who were witness to all of that. This request was rejected by the government a few months later, but after Elon Musk waded in, that government took action. Labour ministers insisted that local inquiries of the kind held in Telford would be more effective than a full-blown national inquiry. The government offered £5 million for 5 such inquiries starting in Oldham. According to Baroness Casey, nobody else came forward. Nick Tenconi is a friend of mine, but if you would know, Emma, Nick has no councillors, no MPs, and he himself is marginalised, I think it would be fair to say. She told the Home Affairs Committee this week, I think Andy Burnham did a good thing in Greater Manchester to say, I'm happy with what's going on here. Do you see how the cover-up started? She's now protecting Andy Burnham. I'm happy with what's going on here. He listened to victims. So we're very clear. Not a single one of Andy Burnham's reviews in Greater Manchester interviewed any of the survivors. The one in Oldham refused to speak to a single victim. So how do you listen to victims when you don't interview them in your own inquiry? He did talk police, he did talk to others, and he instituted assurance reviews. 2 good people did them. They weren't good people. I've got evidence of Gary Ridgway, the police officer, working with one of the local journalists, Charlotte Green, who now works for a fact-checking organisation, who at the time worked for the Manchester Evening News, working together, attempting to do a hit piece on me. They weren't good people. They claimed they found no evidence of a political cover-up. In other words, no evidence of a political cover-up. It's a clever play on words. They never went looking for evidence of a political cover-up. No one, and the way in which the evidence was presented to them, were the gatekeepers, were the council incriminated, no evidence of a political cover-up could be put in front of them. That doesn't mean there was no evidence of a political cover-up. They were just protected through their own actions and the actions of the council from seeing any evidence of a political cover-up. Do you see? Clever play on words. They only got so far because essentially they couldn't require people to give them information. Well, that's not true, Baroness Casey, is it? They couldn't require people is the wrong phrase. They couldn't require the organisations being investigated. Oldham Council, Manchester Council, Greater Manchester Police. Let's be specific. They didn't have any ability to do hearings. Remember? When they contacted me through the council, I said I will give testimony in public at a hearing. And I want my testimony recorded and transcribed word for word. Do you remember? There is a reason why I did what I did. And some dickheads came along, and I'm using that word on purpose, some dickheads came along and said, oh, you're not playing the game, you're not doing things right. This is your chance. No, it wasn't my chance. I'm not going to go and take part in a rigged process. Because I knew what was going to take place. And I knew I needed to continue campaigning the way I was campaigning, which is why I won't talk to Baroness Casey. There is no value in me talking to Baroness Casey. Me talking to Baroness Casey is the equivalent of me talking to some Ayatollah who wants to hang little girls for not wearing a headscarf. I'll never convince them. So I'll continue to campaign the way I am campaigning, which is here. The issue we've got, and I keep telling you because it's vitally important, and I think more and more of you are starting to realise, we need more numbers. So what I share with you, you can share with others, and then the nation knows. Because I am certain that the majority in this nation, just as the majority here with you, amongst you, had no idea about a statutory inquiry's powers, also included not just compelling witnesses, not just directly going after the evidence, but also included the ability to name individuals that should be prosecuted, recommended for prosecution. I accept you share, I accept many of you share. This isn't a criticism of any one person. This is me telling you that we're fighting and we're losing because we haven't got the numbers. And if I have a frustration, it's not directed at you. You'll recall earlier on this week, GB News cancelled on me again. Can you see why? I don't fit the narrative. They've got the parameters set out of what they want to say, where they want the outrage directed, and all the time, and it's all the mainstream media outlets, the individuals responsible are protected. Which is why, when you look at national inquiries, public inquiries, statutory inquiries, no one is ever held to account because the machinery of the state mobilises and wins. Thank you. I think we accept Casey as part of the cover-up, trying to minimise the atrocities against children. Agreed. Agreed. It just went on and on and on, and they did this work and nobody, it took them a long time before anybody said, as in the new chief constable who said, yeah, we didn't get this right and we're sorry to victims. Bullshit. His apology only came after there was nowhere left to hide. And even then, whilst he was apologising to victims, his police officers were going out and warning survivors, threatening survivors. That's why you put it in to say, even where we have actually the police crime commissioner, which is what the mayor is, where you have a police crime commissioner or a mayor that says, I want this to happen, and he spends money getting it to happen, it didn't get him what he wanted, which was accountability on behalf of the victims and the system. So that's an acknowledgement that there was no accountability from any of Andy Burnham's inquiries. If you recall his interviews in January, his panicked interviews in January, he wanted a limited national inquiry because he admitted there were shortcomings in his assurance review, but he wanted all the findings in his assurance reviews to be taken as the starting point. Facts on the ground. Why would you want fabricated reports as facts on the ground? Why would you want evidenced reports with clear inadequacies, admitted inadequacies, to be taken as, okay, we use that as a starting point? Why? looking at that, interviewing various people, we came to the view that without statutory powers, Inquiry Act type powers, you're not going to get anywhere. We told them that 6 years ago. And if we had stopped campaigning, because there's an acknowledgement of Oldham being the trigger throughout all of this, if we had stopped campaigning, they would have succeeded. The not getting anywhere is actually what they wanted. Speaking to the MEN, Mr. Burnham said, accountability of decision makers is simply not achievable through a local process. What have we been saying all along? You can't investigate yourselves, because that's what accountability of decision makers is simply not achievable through a local process. The council cannot investigate the council. Now, if we accept that, if we accept Burnham's U-turn and his position on that, then why is the government allowing funding? Why is the Home Office continuing to fund Oldham Council? That's Harood Shah, the Pakistani gangster endorsed leader of Oldham Council, who, her and her council are neck deep in the cover-up, where all of this started. Why is the government still allowing Oldham to continue with an inquiry without statutory powers? If Burnham himself is now saying accountability of decision makers is simply not achievable through a local process. And there was always a risk that there would be the local inquiries ordered, the ones that the government initially said it wanted to bring through on the Telford model, and where would that go in terms of accountability? Well, we now also know that Louise Casey has confirmed that the only council that has come forward is Oldham. The 5 inquiries don't exist, the only one was Oldham, and the only one reason why Oldham is there is because we forced them there. They didn't go there willingly. It almost could frustrate the victims even more if there wasn't a response, and a proper response to what they actually said in evidence to those local inquiries. We said that to Baroness Casey earlier this year, and she said yesterday that in effect the national inquiry would not have been recommended were it not for the Greater Manchester Assurance Review. That means the national inquiry would not have been recommended were it not for the failures, the exposure of the cover-up of the Greater Manchester Assurance Review. He's now presenting his assurance review as a success. He's now presenting his assurance review as a success. So there you have it. Can you see what they have done? How they've reinvented the facts? Now I know what we need to do. We need to inform and shape the terms of reference. Question the independence of the person they appoint to lead it. I know I can put pressure, some pressure on through the rape gang inquiry team, but that's not my... It's not mine. It doesn't belong to me, does it? There's 20,000 people who've set that up, and it's got a wider remit. And I'm very, very light touch with Sammy Woodhouse and the others. Thank you. It's exhausting for me, Ryan. It's now exhausting for me because I'm coming to realize that what we've now done is managed to mobilize even more machinery of the state to protect them. And we haven't got the numbers to fight back. We haven't got the numbers to educate, to inform, to question and challenge in the right way on the right things. Indeed, the whole system is rigged. Does that mean we give up? No, of course it doesn't mean we give up. All I'm asking you is understand why I'm asking. Why I'm asking, support me, support me, support me. Tommy Robinson hasn't got a clue about any of the things I'm talking about. I have no expertise in what he does, and what I do, he doesn't. People keep asking me, why not join with Tommy Robinson? Why should I? What difference do you think it'll make? He put something out a couple of days ago. For decades, they've demonized him and everything else to make him look like far right and something else. I can't go into that space. He needs to clean that up himself. I can't go into that place. Going into that place is exactly what the government want me to do. You think it strengthens us. It doesn't strengthen us. It weakens us. Why don't you go and ask Maggie Oliver to go and work with Tommy Robinson? And I'm not criticising the man. You'll see I'm not criticising the man. If you are finding value in this evening's transmission, if you're one of the 1587, please consider subscribing to Red Wall and the Rabble. This isn't about money, this is about numbers. We need numbers. We're not even hit 5,000 yet. I'd hoped we'd have hit 5,000. It's just creeping along, and I know because I've done this work. I know I'm running out of time. I know we're running out of time. It's not just my guts, Jenny, it's my experience. I see the board played out in front of me. I see the move that perhaps they want me to make. And I see the benefit it might have in the short term, but then I also see how it will trap me and then trap all of you. We're about 150 short of 5,000. And I hope he, and I've pleaded, he goes on a journey where he comes out the other end. Yeah, that's nonsense. I've seen the English Constitution Party. You can go down that road if you think you'll get anywhere. It should be an outside UK judge. I think you've heard me right from the outset. I talked about a judge from The Hague. Let me play you something. I want to play you something. Find it so I can play it. Put my headphones on.
Very briefly, Whitehall, because this week Dominic Cummings and Michael Gove was the former Education Secretary, Cummings was his special advisor, both said that they felt that Whitehall officials pushed back. They pushed back and actually tried to injunct Andrew Norfolk when he wanted to expose everything in the Times in 2011. Was one of the reasons you were pushed out of the Home Office because you wanted to crack down on this?
So I'm very forthright, as people who know me know that I am, and I'm driven by driving outcomes and making sure that no stone is left unturned. And on this in particular, absolutely. I look back and I know that I did a lot of scrutiny, asked all the right questions, probably made a lot of people feel very uncomfortable. I know there are officials in my department that felt very uncomfortable with my line of probing, my line of questioning.
Did they push back and try and cover things up?
I think absolutely.
Wow.
There's no question about that.
So this inquiry has to look at the politicians, but it also has to look at the civil servants.
So I think this inquiry is...
everyone in Whitehall.
It's everyone. It's about institutional state failure. Camilla, this is institutional state failure at every single level. I'm very happy to participate in the inquiry and share what I knew, the questions that I put forward, but also the challenges that I had to put forward in the system and where we weren't getting answers. And by the way, that wasn't just in the Home Office. That was in local councils, the NHS. I remember visiting Sarah Champion's constituency, and I think we were both pretty horrified and gobsmacked by the non-answers we were getting. And I will say this, probably the level of indifference we were receiving to our line of questioning.
Well, let's hope that we get further and thorough lines of questioning in this inquiry.
So that is Priti Patel, while she was Home Secretary, confirming institutional state failure at every level. Well, actually, no. The institution doesn't fail, people fail. So you see, straight away she's defending and hiding away. But she's trying to say she was powerless. She's the Home Secretary and she was powerless. Absolute bullshit. Because if you're a Home Secretary and you're powerless and children are being gang raped across the country and you know about it, as the Home Secretary, you had a duty to speak out. Instead of speaking out, she did this.
For you when you were Home Secretary, and I know you are running out of time because you've got another interview to go to, I want to give you a chance to respond to this. This is the 2020 report into the grooming gangs by the Home Office. You wrote the foreword. It quite preposterously concluded that there was not a disproportionate overrepresentation of British Pakistanis.
So off the back of that report, I set up something called the External Reference Group that looked into the characteristics, the nationalities and the origins of those that were involved in the grooming gangs. we call it grooming gangs now, but it was a range of activity, basically, criminal activity against girls. And actually, I worked with the likes of Sarah Champion and brought in others on that work. And we've got to remember, at the time we had the J review taking place, so we were not in a position to start initiating new reviews. You have to have these ones. The J one was a big one.
No, but do you regret putting your name to that report?
Well, I think actually, in hindsight, absolutely, because now we see so much more evidence that has come forward. And it is only through the further evidence, the effectively challenging of the institutional state failure that we've seen. Certainly that applies to the Home Office, there's no doubt about that. That applies to social services around the country. It applies to health services around the country. Definitely applies to local government and local government leaders as well. So the answer to that question is yes. And there should have been so much more that took place in the past, not just to have stopped this, but to fast-track prosecutions and for the state, parts of the state to stop facilitating, I think, and covering up some of the things that went on.
Parts of the state, not just covering up, facilitating. The former Home Secretary is now confirming on national news in an attempt to divert and deflect away from her own shortcomings, but that's by the by, we'll get to that in a moment. The former Home Secretary of this country, and now she's a shadow Foreign Secretary, so she's not without power, is now confirming on national news that there were elements of the state that were facilitating the gang rape of children. And if not facilitating the cover-up of the gang rape of children, which then allowed for those who were gang raping the children to continue because they felt they had permission to do so. That's the former Home Secretary confirming that there were parts of the state facilitating the gang rape of children. I've been a bit down today. And now I know why. It's hearing the former Home Secretary admit to that. What sort of country are we living in, people? When the Home Secretary cries she was powerless, acknowledges that parts of the state not just covered up what's taking place, but were involved in facilitating what was taking place. And she deflects away from her own shortcomings in hindsight, absolutely, because you know what she did with that 2020 report? They nearly buried us with it. Because that 2020 report was used by every left-wing Labour Party supporting public figure to call us far-right and racist. Because it hid the Pakistani correlation, it hid the Muslim correlation. Of course, if the Conservatives were serious in leaving no stone unturned and going after people involved in the cover-up, they would have to have Priti Patel thrown to the wolves. She was the Home Secretary who wrote a forward on that report fronting a lie, misinformation, disinformation, call it whatever you will. Disinformation, I think, rather than misinformation. That led to the cover-up being nearly complete. How does that make you feel? She could have done something. She should have done something. Staggering, yeah. Absolutely. It makes me feel sick and ashamed. It makes me feel sick and ashamed. Yeah. And I am feeling a little depleted, but we're still here. We're still in the fight. And maybe that's a win. The former Home Secretary confirming that the state was involved in facilitating the gang rape of little white girls. Listen to it again. I'll play it again. I'll play it again. Priti Patel's not a Muslim, mate. She's a Hindu.
For you when you were Home Secretary, and I know you are running out of time because you've got another interview to go to. I want to give you a chance to respond to this. This is the 2020 report into the grooming gangs by the Home Office. You wrote the foreword. It quite preposterously concluded that there was not a disproportionate overrepresentation of British Pakistanis.
So off the back of that report, I set up something called the External Reference Group that looked into the characteristics, the nationalities and the origins of those that were involved in the grooming gangs. We call it grooming gangs now, but it was a range of activity, basically, criminal activity against girls. And actually, I worked with the likes of Sarah Champion and brought in others on that work. And we've got to remember at the time we had the J review taking place, so we were not in the position to start initiating new reviews. You have to have these ones. The J one was a big one.
No, but do you regret putting your name to that report?
Well, I think actually in hindsight, absolutely, because now we see so much more evidence that has come forward. And it is only through the further evidence, the effectively challenging of the institutional state failure that we've seen. Certainly that applies to the Home Office, there's no doubt about that. That applies to social services around the country. It applies to health services around the country. Definitely applies to local government and local government leaders as well. So the answer to that question is yes. And there should have been so much more that took place in the past, not just to stop this, but to fast-track prosecutions and for the state, parts of the state to stop facilitating, I think, and covering up some of the things that went on.
There you go. The state facilitating and covering up. Okay. She also talks about it being criminal activity against girls. Do you see how the former Home Secretary avoids the elephant in the room? This was more than just criminal activity against girls. This was rape jihad, rape genocide. These were racially motivated crimes, religiously justified. They were targeted for their ethnicity, and the establishment that she criticises them ignored them because it benefited the politicians and because of the contempt they themselves held towards the working class. So, that is where we're up to. I don't think you understand, I don't mean it disrespectfully to you at all, actually. I'm just trying to find my mouse so I can put the comment up. He says he's looking for his mouse. Is it going to turn up anywhere soon? Oh, there you go. I don't think you understand, right? I think some of this is a lot of these people, they and I are not politically aligned. So I'm very clear. I come at this from you can see where I come at it from. I come at it from a child protection perspective. It's what I know. It's what I've done all my life. An anti-extremist, viewpoint. And it is my position that we need to find a way where the majority of us who want to live together can live and will live together. And it's not a criticism of them. It's just their position. I know it's their position when I went and spoke with them. But they want to live in a country where either Islam is outlawed or it's made to be extremely difficult for Muslims to live here. I understand that viewpoint, I understand how they got to that viewpoint, but I am not of that school of thought. So, I'm going to go and get myself a drink because my drink's run out. And I'll play the music. And I plead with you to sign up to Red Wall and the Rabble. I don't think I'm asking you to live with my religion, okay? But it is still my religion, and I'm asking you to... and Lynn, no, I don't do that. I'm not going to give you the artwork for my t-shirts for other people to make my t-shirts. There was a time and a place when we did the t-shirts, and that time has come and gone, and I'm not doing any more t-shirts, and I wouldn't be keen if people tried to copy my t-shirts. There's a journey, and a journey, and a journey, and this is a journey from our past. I drink Vimto. So, you asked me a question, and that's my position. I don't think anyone who's been with me on this journey from Oldham will disagree with my position. I've been consistent on it. And some of you who've been on the journey with me have also evolved your thinking, where you were very anti-Muslim, anti-Islam to start with, and got to find me from a very angry space. I'm not at all happy with those who are responsible for promoting my religion in the communities where I come from. I'm not at all happy with the way the politicians have infiltrated it and are using it to harvest postal votes. But as I say all the time, Islam is not what rules this country. It's secular law set by Parliament, and the responsibility is with Parliament. It needs to be more robust in the way it protects our values. You've seen the nonsense going on at the moment with the Islamophobia laws. It's stupid. I'm very clear. Criticise my faith as much as you want. Criticise any faith as much as you want. In a liberal Western democracy, no one should be put in prison for criticising ideas or beliefs, because that's what they are. Ideas and beliefs. And what sort of belief? How strong is your belief? How weak is your belief? If someone else criticises it and you fall apart. The responsibility lies with the government, not with some 12-year-old girl who wears a hijab. Right. This nonsense stops, please. If you want to have conversations about faults with the Maggie Oliver Foundation, go and do it somewhere else. Do not use my platform and my audience to try and smear a foundation that is in the main doing very good work. It has its issues, like all organisations have its issues. If you've got an issue with them, take it up with them, but not for here. If you are new to me, please consider signing up and subscribing to Redwall and therabble.co.uk. Without your support, we go nowhere. This ends, and this evening we've had 3 people sign up. I'm not interested. You guys want a conversation about Maggie Oliver's foundation? Go and run your own podcasts, or go and ask Maggie Oliver. But I don't want the conversation on here. The music I use is a track called Play Like a Champion, is what it's called. I picked it up, I think, about 5 years ago, and I do have a license to use it, as YouTube keep sending me message to say I'm not meant to use it, they've done something. Then I send them a copy of my license. I have a license to use it. If we continue with the Maggie Oliver chat, I will just end the transmission for the evening. I'm not having a charity, dirty laundry, true, false, whatever aired on this space. So if it continues, I'll just call it a night. We've had 3 people sign up. Thank you to the 3 people who've signed up. It means a lot. Thank you so much. I'll continue. This is the Minister for Safeguarding Women and Girls. You've seen her repeatedly. They're gone. I've just banned them. Sorry. Okay. Do you see why we get fucked? And how easy it is to run rings around us? When we squabble amongst ourselves. They're gang raping our children. They're covering it up. And you want to squabble over what might or might not have happened with someone at a foundation. At whatever criticism you might have. We would not be here if it wasn't for the work of Maggie Oliver. If you believe that Tommy Robinson is responsible for helping get us here, if you believe that, then you must also believe that Maggie Oliver has also played her part in making sure that this is not just contained in a far-right angry space in the media, but discussed in the living rooms of women who are influential in their communities. I won't have it. I won't have it. This is Jess Phillips. All the time she complains about women misogyny. Men. Here she is in a room full of Muslim men. Not a woman in sight. Quite happily sat there. Quite happily sat there. Knowing, and I'm certain of this, she knows full well of how the block vote operates. She knows full well of the postal votes that these men control. And she knows full well that the women in their community do not have the same freedoms or the political franchise as these men do. She knows that. Yet here she is, happy to pose with them, happy to sit and nibble samosas. I'm sure there were samosas on their way there. I think the picture is from just before the general election, I think. So in the lead up to the general election, give or take the same time as Angela Rayner was sat in that room with the Asian men where the video came out. And I saw that as well, the laughing on her phone on the front bench. I saw that as well. So if these people are champions for women, what are they doing there? She's not the Minister for Safeguarding Girls. She's the Minister for Safeguarding Votes. People like this make me sick. The hypocrisy is on another level. All this time, men, yet here you are in a room full of men who are disenfranchising women. This is exactly what it is. This is harvesting votes. This is wrong. I want anyone in the Labour Party to defend any of this. It's wrong. And this is the same Jess Phillips. So there's no ambiguity. Sat on a letter for the best part of 3 months, calling for a public inquiry in Oldham before saying no. Then responded with a follow-up saying she was too busy to come and meet with people in Oldham. She can nibble samosas with her block voters, but she was too busy to come and meet. Demands on her time. All the time, she claimed that she was opposed to a national inquiry because survivors had told her that. She won't say how many survivors had told her she was opposed to a national inquiry. I bet these men were opposed to a national inquiry. I am going to a meeting in London on Tuesday. In fact, I'm going tomorrow because the meeting is very early on Tuesday. It is with one of the country's most senior politicians and a team of lawyers. And by the time we've finished, just as we've got this far here with this issue, and it's now out in the open, by the time we finished, we will have exposed in all its gory detail postal vote fraud and the disenfranchisement of communities and how it links to the Labour Party. They offered to pay me. I said no. Pay my expenses. I also said no. If you followed my work, we've been talking about this issue from the beginning. I am an advocate of women's rights. And I say to every politician who wants to talk to me about the hijab or the headscarf or whatever you want to call it, the niqab, and say it's anti-women's rights and it's oppression of women, what I respond with is, I agree with you. There are women in our society, in the communities I come from, that are either forced to wear that or wear it to conform or wear it as a consequence of pressure. I agree with that. But do you agree with me that if you believe that's the case, then also these very same women have their vote stolen from them by the men? If they're making them wear hijabs, what do you think they're doing with their votes? So that's what I'm going tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday morning, very early. I've got a meeting. And I'll do there what I've done here. And it'll take us 3 years. So we're clear it'll take us another 3 years. But it's one and the same. I'm clear on my position. We are fighting a war against Islamists, Pakistani separatists, all of that. But they wouldn't be able to do what they're doing if it wasn't for the complicity of the Labour Party and women like this who court and pander to all of this. Thank you so much, Darcy. Thank you. Thank you, Colin. Appreciate it. I'm proud. I say to everyone who asks me, I am very, very proud that I am 100% community funded. I'm not on anyone's payroll. And everyone who supports me does so because of my independence. You've seen I've just called out Priti Patel. She's a Conservative. I don't care. She's wrong. I called out Jess Phillips. She's wrong. Thank you. There's so much more to go through. My plan is to come back tomorrow lunchtime. I'm on the 5 o'clock train. I'll come back tomorrow lunchtime. And I'll carry on where I left off. Hopefully we'll have a few more sign-ups by then. And hopefully we'll all be energized, including myself, so we can go again. I know we've got to keep going. I know we've got to keep going. And I know we've got to keep trying no matter what. I know that. Thank you. I know that. I just know it'd be so much easier if we had a few more people with us, including the thousands who have watched this evening, who are yet to just click on the link at the top and sign up to the web page, all for free. Don't have to pay. We need numbers and I need your help. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.